Hey, what's up, everybody? This is an open discussion with C3 Films. My name is Chris, and this is.
Cheryl.
And today we're going to be talking about a movie that is near and dear to my heart. It is my favorite movie of all time. One of the only reasons, not the only reason, but one of the main reasons why I wanted to even get into filmmaking in the first place. And that movie is The Matrix. So, if you haven't seen the movie, shame on you. It's from 1999, one of the best films ever. Spawned a whole culture of memes and all these other things. Go and watch the movie, check it out, come back here, watch this video because we are getting into spoiler territory and I'm going in hard because I love this movie so much. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and we're jumping right into it. Miss Cheryl, tell me, what did you think of The Matrix? Did you get it? Did it confuse you? Does it make more sense now after watching it again? Where are you after watching this movie for another time?
Um, I thought it was bad and I hated it. No, I'm just kidding.
You are going to have me come to your house later on. Oh wait, we're being recorded. I think that's great, Cheryl,
Shots
and I respect
fired.
your opinion.
Do it with me. Oh. I'm gonna dodge your bullets.
You're gonna have to later.
Because I'm the one and you're the none.
Okay, yeah, let's keep it up, movie girl. Let's go.
All right. I now that I'm an adult, because in 1999 I was 11 years old, but
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I understood it a lot more. There was a lot of talking, a lot of just Morpheus explaining everything, which
Yeah.
usually isn't great to have so much exposition. But I feel like it was okay because they did it in a cool way. Because they weren't just talking about it, they were also showing us at the same time, which kind of was necessary for something so complicated. There's just a whole big world to be explained.
Right.
I know they took inspiration from the original 1995 version of Ghost in the Shell. Definitely see that. I could definitely see how they got so many ideas from that other movie. It's definitely
Mm-hmm.
different. I was kind of going into it with the idea of like, oh, why didn't they just do this in 2017 with Scarlett Johansson? But I could see how they really made it their own and they made something different and maybe a little more interesting because it kind of makes you think about like where you put your trust in. I guess it's kind of it's still kind of walks on the same line of um, what what they're challenging in that sense, but definitely was feeling the average like Joe Schmo and your corporate life and doing the same thing every day, like a robot world where you're just a drone in life and having this escape to this like crazy kind of apocalyptic world where like there is just nothing there and everything to fight for.
Yeah.
So that's cool for 1999.
I mean, well, even though the movie's from 1999, I feel like minus some CG, the movie holds up pretty well to this
Mm-hmm.
day.
Oh yeah,
It's very good.
the technology for the way they shot it, because when you watch it and like today, even if you didn't know that it was 1989, it looks really good. I know they had a lot of innovative technology or like just techniques that they were using for the stuff that they did. Some of the CGI is like, oh, it's CGI, but
Mm.
it's computer. Like the Matrix is all computer stuff, so I buy it. I buy that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there was a lot of emerging technology at the time that then kind of spawned other people doing more and doing similar things with it. So one of the things that is usually levied against the Matrix as a negative is what you mentioned before about the exposition dump. at the beginning of the movie after when Neo first wakes up and like is having to learn what the Matrix is. And there's no real way, like you were saying, there's no real way to address that um, without just having that exposition dump because it's so high concept. Even when like my mom or other people saw the movie, they still didn't get it, even when it's explained to you. And it's not just explained verbally; it's explained visually. So they try to find all these different ways to try to tell you that the world that we are in is fake, and there's another world that is real. We are simply plugged into a computer simulation, and that concept is simple, but it at the time and even when you're watching the movie, it can be challenging for some people to really connect with that and wrap their minds around the complexities of okay, well, if I'm aware that I'm in a computer simulation, why does that make it? That makes it so that I can like jump a building when someone that doesn't know, like they can't, or even the situation for how the agents move through people. That's something that you might not get right away. You might not understand that an agent can only move through people that are plugged in to that very system, despite them actively showing you as well. So the movie is tasked with trying to give you all this information to establish the rules because it needs you to at least understand the rules on a surface level for you to be able to understand what's going to be happening throughout the rest of the movie.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what the red pill is for.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things that I think is really fun about this movie, you can let me know what you thought about this, is the way the movie throws you in. So, like, I'm always a fan of when stories just kind of throw you into a world and let you figure it out. And this movie does that for the very beginning. And even throughout when we first meet Neo and Neo meets Morpheus, like we are very much like Neo. He is the representation for the audience. What he learns, we learn, and he's also the most powerful character in the show in the movie as you find out by the end. But like the movie begins and it seems like it's going to be a regular grounded based in reality film, and you have all these cops that are moving in on Trinity, and you're not knowing what to expect, and then you see her single handedly take out a room full of cops in spectacular form. But not only that, you see her run along the wall, and you're like, okay, that's not that's not normal. But maybe martial arts, fine, whatever. And it builds on that because then in the next scene, so you just got done establishing that she's not to be messed with, and in the next scene, she's running. She's running from somebody else that's wearing a suit, and you're like, okay, well maybe she's just trying to get away so she doesn't have to fight, and she runs from them, and it's all these little things where they start off by showing you a little moment that's going to like pay off like later. They jump across a small gap on the roof of the building, right? And then a couple of other cops try to jump, and one almost doesn't make the jump to show you that this was not an easy jump to make, but people made it. And then they make it a huge jump, and she does it, and you think, oh man, like yeah, she really is incredible. But then the guy chasing her does it too, and she looks afraid of the guy chasing her. So now, as an audience member, you're asking yourself, wait, if she's as strong as she is, but she's afraid of him, what can he do? And then that kind of like logic just takes you through the entirety of the rest of the film up until the point where the last like 40 minutes are just a straight action sequence.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely a traditional start with a brain scratcher,
Mm-hmm.
exciting, hooking scene, and then starting the story where, like you said, things are being revealed to you at the same pace as your main character. And so you're kind of experiencing the same thing that he is because you're learning at the same time what he's learning. So, like, when he gets information, you get the information too. And I think that's a great way to be able to tell that story. And, like you said, discover this world. And I guess like I feel like it was kind of ruined for me because it's such an old movie, and because I was so young when I first watched it, I kind of already knew what it was about, um, because of how talked about it was. But I guess you could say, when you first see that opening scene, you really don't know that there's a world beyond that world. And
True.
you kind of think of Trinity and the agents as maybe like supernatural people, or just, you're they're setting up this world to be kind of fantastical because
Hmm.
they can do things that are not realistic, like physically realistic. So kind of sets that up, I think. Um, but I do think it's cool, and I feel like for this is the first time I really got to have a clear understanding of what the world is like outside of the Matrix, because they spend most of the time in the ship and inside the program. So there's very few like scenes that you get to see of the actual world, like
Yeah.
the real world. But what is the real world really? What is actually real? They say that a lot. But you don't get to see a lot of that, and so it's kind of like it makes you kind of wonder what they are living in. And like the guy, what's his name, Cypher,
Hmm.
why would you want to live in that world instead of the Matrix where everything is kind of nicer?
Yeah.
But
No,
I
it makes
guess
sense.
like it kind of hits on the whole thing about individuality and freedom, and that kind of circles back to like being a drone, right? Where you're kind
Hmm.
of, like all of us, we're just walking day to day in this life that we have to live in the way the society is built, because we don't really have a choice. And I think that's why the Matrix is so cool, is because it like gives us that fantasy that we could maybe have a life, outside of this world.
Yeah, but then still, if you ask the question, would you really would? It's that it makes you ask the question of what would you do if you knew the truth? Would you choose to live this life that is free of these rules and regulations if it means that you could be free, but you'd have a harder life? Or would you choose to simply live that life of rules and regulations despite being a slave, which is essentially what they all are? And like this movie does a very good job of, like I was saying earlier, about how it kind of just throws you into certain situations that don't make sense until you either watch it a second time or if you remember what was said earlier. When they first get Neo and they put him in the chair before they like unplug him from the system, Morpheus is talking to Tank as if we already know who Tank is, but we haven't even seen Tank. He said, and he actually says, he tells Neo, the thing that we gave you was something so that we can find you. And that is meant to be a confusing sentence because what do you mean find me? I'm already here. And then you almost forget about that sentence, that what he said. And when they find him later, when he gets dumped and they pull him out of the water, you might not even remember that they said the thing that you took is going to help us find you. And you might even say to yourself, well, how did they find him? They already told you how. But you didn't know that he had to even be looked for in the first place because you didn't know what was coming next. And there's so many moments like that in this movie, even when Morpheus is explaining the whole idea about how humans have always needed machines to survive. And then the little next line he says is, fate, it seems, is not without a sense of irony, which is because he's immediately about to tell you that that machines now need humans to survive. And so, like, it's just there's all these different little bits and pieces of information that just come your way that if you're paying attention, then you can like recall them later and realize, oh, that's what they were referring to, that's what they mean. And if you don't necessarily pick up on it on like your first viewing, when you watch it a second time, now all of the stuff that he's saying makes 100% complete sense because you know the whole story, and it makes subsequent viewings more fun to watch. And that's one thing I love about films like this, is when they find a way to make your second viewing even more rewarding than the first.
That's true. It is definitely one of those where the first time you watch it, you're like, huh? But then you still enjoy it and you kind of get it. But then you watch it again and you're like, oh, that's why they said, oh, I know what he's going at. I know what that is. I know it. And you're right. Like when what he says before he takes the red pill, that it was so that they could find him. I definitely didn't pick up on that the first time, but watching it back this weekend, I was like, "Oh, that's what the pill is for."
Yep,
Because I
exactly,
was
exactly.
actually asking myself at the beginning of the scene, like, why even bother with these pills if, like, they're just gonna, like, they don't really need the pill. But then they gave the pill a reason, and you just didn't remember because you didn't know what was gonna happen. So,
Yeah, exactly. And another part of the movie that I think is very strong is that so when you look back at the movie, Neo is an anagram for one. It feels obvious that Neo is the one, but in the context of the film, it's a tug of war between is he or isn't he? You know, so like when he first starts training and he has to do the jump program, they're saying, what if he makes it on the first try? And then he doesn't. He fails. So it makes you think, okay, well maybe he's not the one. And then but then they're gonna go see the Oracle, and it's like, okay, wait, you know what? Maybe he is the one because he's gonna go see the Oracle, and they're confident. But then the Oracle tell you he's not the one, and once again, you're like, well, maybe he's not. And then once again, later on, you see him dodging bullets, but he gets hit. So he's dodging bullets as if he's the one, but then he still gets hit. So maybe he's not. He finally fights an agent. Maybe he is the one. Maybe he can win. He technically loses and barely survives, but he does win. But he doesn't win like 100%, by a landslide. It was hard and it was lucky. So maybe he's not the one. But you get to the end, he's gonna escape. He gets shot and killed. Wow, he's not the one. And then the final moment happens where he gets up and it's no longer a question. He's able to shape the matrix as he sees fit. He's able to give it to Agent Smith. He is the one. And that tug of war throughout the entire movie, I think, is a nice way of making a movie that could be predictable not feel as predictable.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely. Well, I mean, obviously, I knew he was the one, but I did notice and pick up on that doubt that they put in there. But then it's kind of like, how could he not be the one? Because it's Keanu Reeves and he's the main character, and like, there's no other perspective person to be the one. So except for maybe Morpheus, but
Yeah,
it's
right.
not Morpheus. I did want to ask you though, why is the Oracle in the Matrix and not out of the Matrix? Because they lost good people that day because they had to go in there just so that Neo could talk to her.
Right. Because and this is answered definitively in the later movies, but it's suggested in this movie. The Oracle is not a human being. The Oracle is a program within the Matrix,
I see.
and so that also when Neo realizes that. That's why in the second movie he ends up literally asking her, "Well, if you're a program that is a part of the Matrix, how do I know that you're not just another part of this system of control?" And that's when she just says, "You know what? You can believe me or you don't, or not believe me. It's up to you. You make your own choice." And that's another thing that's really important in these movies is like this idea of choice. You being able to choose what you want to do, but at the same time, it's veiled under predetermination because if an oracle can see everything that's going to happen, but it's telling you that it's your choice whether or not it does happen, but the things that she does influences your choice so that you choose the thing that she wants you to choose, then is that really free will?
Right, like if she didn't say anything, he might have not knocked over the flowers.
Right? So she it almost is like she made that happen. Um so yeah, so there's all these like interesting questions, and then there's like this philosophy of perspective, changing your perspective, changing how you look at the world around you and what reality is. Don't try to bend the spoon because the spoon doesn't actually exist. That's impossible. What you need to understand is the spoon is not there in the first place, and then it's not the spoon that bends, but it's only yourself. So even that line in itself is a way to try to get you to reshape your way of thinking in the reality. And the reason that you can jump a building like it's nothing is because you're telling yourself, you're freeing your mind, as Morpheus puts it, so that you can kind of reevaluate the world you're around you and see it in a different way. So there's that whole little sub message within the movie as well, which I think is kind of cool.
I feel a little bit like trying to understand this movie and how the Matrix works and like what is reality is like trying to figure out the concept or like understanding the concept of the fourth dimension. Like what? Like I get it, it's there, but I can't quite understand comprehend what.
Right? No, I think that's it's very true. It's meant to be a mind bender for sure. One other thing when I was looking at this movie was that I thought this movie was a good example of how you can blend concept and character. And it's not necessarily like all of the characters get so much time to shine, but I felt like when you meet the characters, you get an immediate sense of who they are. Like, what did you think about the characters in the movie?
um I don't feel like all the characters were that strong. It's a little hard
Mm,
to say because I feel like my opinion is a little tainted because of all the like outside like all the stuff that like you you hear about over the years and like having already seen it before, so I'm not getting a I watched it the first time experience. um I I don't know how I feel about Trinity's character because I feel like they make her out to be like a strong woman and everything, but she really isn't. Like she is good with combat and everything, but in the end they kind of make her they make her the love interest and they make it all about him and her supporting him. And I feel like it would have been better if she was tougher and was more of a guiding role or had more of a, like a maybe a moment with him where they have a fight, like they have a spar and she
oh,
wins.
you mean physical fight?
Yeah, maybe something like that. I think just to like give her a little bit more of a, because she should be able to stand her ground because she comes off as the kind of person that could handle things on her own, and not that she like ever needs saving really, but she kind of does, and he does kind of save her. And I know that you know he is the one and he's supposed to do that, and he saves Morpheus too and everything, like he saves everybody. But I feel like I didn't like that they did that to her character.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I feel like for me, I felt like it to me it seemed like it was more teamwork where it did feel like they were saving each other. I think I can 100% agree on like maybe like the personality side of things. They have that one argument where she basically tells him that I'm the ranking captain of the ship, and if it's not, and it's up to me whether you go or you stay. But it was his idea to go in the first place. Um, in a way, that's kind of just to say that he believes that he can save Morpheus, and so he kind of brings them along in his belief. He ropes them in the same way Morpheus did. But that entire ending sequence, it feels like to me that they're working together to save Morpheus because she saves him from the agent. You know, he gets he gets shot when he's dodging and he's about to die, and then she's the one that shoots the agent in the head. She's able to fly the helicopter so that they can both get away. Oh, and even in that same scene, right before they fly the helicopter, he's about to get shot in the back, and she throws the knife and hits the guy in the head. So it felt like teamwork. And one of my favorite scenes in the movie is this moment where they try to show kind of how they are connected without actually talking, because they get into the helicopter and the helicopter is about to go down. Right? They drop off Morpheus, and remember, Neo is hooked in because that's how he was able to jump and grab Morpheus. But they didn't have any conversation at this moment because they're all just they're falling and the helicopter's going down. And when he's standing there hooked in that moment, he makes the decision that he's going to grab this thing that's still hooked to the helicopter because he's trusting that Trinity is going to unhook it so that she can get away. But if Trinity doesn't unhook it, he gets pulled off the edge of that building because it's hooked into the helicopter. If he doesn't actively think to himself to grab this, then when Trinity grabs the rope and shoots it so that she can get out of the helicopter, she falls to her death. So without them actually talking to each other, they both actively made this decision to save one another. And that's one of those things that I did like. So I agree with you that they definitely could have done more. Trinity's probably the weakest character out of the main three, out of the trinity of main characters. Um, but I did like the fact that it felt like they were a team working to save each other. Even when she got out of the Matrix, when an agent showed up, the first thing she says is, "Send me back." And so I like that. Even though she knows that he's fighting an agent and no one beats an agent, and and remember, she started the movie by running from an agent. In this moment, she's like, "No, send me back. I'm gonna fight it." So I did like that element about her character.
Yeah, I mean, she definitely has a lot of great moments. I think what I really didn't need was the
The love
whole,
interest.
yeah, the whole love thing. Like, because I knew that they were
It's
going to
tacked
have
on.
a thing, but I do feel a little bit like it came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it just, and it wasn't necessary because it was like at the very end. Like they already finished the movie, and now all of a sudden there's this budding romance between them. And he wasn't
Right.
awake for it.
Right.
He
No, and
just
you're
wakes
right.
up
Like
and
that's
he's
probably
like,
another thing.
oh, we're a thing now.
No, yeah, I think that's another good point because she also uses the words "I love you," and it's one of those things that up until this point in the movie, we haven't really seen them interact in a way that can even build that love. It actually would almost kind of be more realistic if Neo told Morpheus he loves him. Um, just based off of the moments we get to see characters share. So I definitely agree with you there. That is probably another weak part about the movie is that it has this kind of tacked on love element because they wanted to do the whole thing of she brings him back to life because of her love. Um, but yeah, no, I 100% get what you're saying there.
One thing that did bother me was when they were in the helicopter and they were shooting at the agents, and Morpheus was sitting in the middle, but somehow managed to shoot everything but him.
It's okay. They were shooting around
And
him.
you couldn't see anything, and I'm sure they couldn't see where they were shooting, but somehow
I mean, they
that was
knew
a
the layout.
stretch.
They knew the layout. They saw before they started shooting everything. He just knew around the areas where he needed to shoot. They actually do show a brief scene or a brief moment in that sequence where he kind of makes a U shape with the machine gun so in that the point of that is to show that he's trying to shoot around Morpheus. But it's funny because then when you look at the clip of him shooting, it's just he's like going like this.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, you can't shoot a giant machine gun from a helicopter into one room in a building and have any aim at all because that thing is just like no
No,
way.
oh man, he's the one. He can do whatever he wants.
I don't care if you're John Wick, it's still not working.
Oh man. No, yeah, no, I hear you. I love that whole ending sequence of the movie though. It's that lobby scene is one of the best action sequences put to film. It's great music, great choreography, and the explosions of the plaster or the plywall or whatever it's called is so beautiful to see on the screen when it's just going all over the place and dust in the air and you see them running through it like timed with the music. Also, speaking of music in this movie, original score, great, absolutely. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say that I definitely enjoyed the action sequences, and I like how they were. I like where they were placed. Like it wasn't like just at the beginning or just at the end, or like it. There were action sequences throughout the movie, which I thought was cool because it kept the speed of the movie going. throughout all
Yeah.
the expedition, right?
Yeah. Another great like moment is when Morpheus and Neo are training for the first time, and then everybody in the crew is like, Morpheus is fighting Neo, and then you see everybody just jump up and run because they want to see it. I thought that's a funny moment. That's a little moment, but it's a moment nonetheless that kind of shows you the personalities of this crew and like, oh wow, Morpheus is fighting Neo. Yo, let's go see this. This is serious. Like, why didn't anyone tell us? Um, so yeah, and the last thing I kind of want to say because we're running on time here is that like just touching back on characters briefly, while not that many characters get a chance to shine outside of like Morpheus and Neo, I I feel that the characters that we meet, you get to really kind of just get a sense of them within like a short amount of time, even if we don't know the intricacies about them. Like you talk to Tank, and he feels like a different personality than Switch, who feels like a different personality than Cipher, who feels like a different personality than Dozer. Like they still feel distinguishable. They don't all feel like just one like one blank slate. Which I feel like when you look at the cast of like Ghost in the Shell, for instance, like regardless, like anime or whatever, a lot of those characters don't feel indistinguishable from one another. But the characters of the Nebuchadnezzar, to me, like felt like they had distinct personalities, even if I don't know their personal history.
Yeah, I would agree. They definitely all have like I mean, they didn't particularly stand out, but I can tell them apart from each other.
Right. Exactly, and I think that that's important. Even though they exist because they're going to be killed off in the movie to like make a point. Um, but yeah, I could talk about this movie all day, and I know nobody is ready or wants that. So, is there any other like lingering thoughts that you wanted to bring up before we close out?
I think just one last thing. It was a little bit jarring, I guess, to see the whole kung fu stuff with like they basically do martial arts. It's not just combat. They're actually doing martial art moves in like a martial art movie kind of style, even with the like whole fly kicking thing. So it was a little
Mhm.
weird for me to see that in an American movie played by non Asian people. So I think that bothered me a little bit because I felt like, why isn't there any Asian people in this movie? And it was 1999, and they still had like a way to go, and we still have a ways to go. But that did feel a little weird to me just watching those scenes, despite liking the action scenes.
So that's fair. Do you know who the fight choreographer was, though?
I don't, but I imagine that it was an Asian martial arts person.
Yes, it was Yuan Wu Ping, who is famous for martial arts in movies, and the entire, or not the entire, but a lot of the stunt fighters and choreographer and fellow choreographers were also Asian, including Tiger Chen was also in that movie. Well, not in the movie, but was one of the fight choreographers and trainers in the movie to help everybody fight. So it's very highly influenced by Asian martial arts as well. But I cannot argue with the fact that it is kind of jarring when there are no Asian characters in the movie, although there is technically one, even though people don't know it. But the guy who plays Tank is half Asian actually. But yeah, that gets improved in the later movies at least. But yeah,
Yeah.
I can definitely see where that critique comes from. Absolutely. So, but what about you guys? Have you guys seen The Matrix? What did you think about it? And also, what's wrong with you if you haven't seen it? But if you haven't seen it, please go watch it and let us know what you thought about it. Like, did you get it the first time that you saw it? After like other viewings, did you enjoy it more? Did you see the trilogy? Did you see the other two movies? Like, did you feel like they were just so bad that they didn't even hold a candle to the first, or did you maybe you like them a little bit more? I don't know. Either way, comment below, let us know, and while you're down there, if you give us a like, share, subscribe. Even if you don't, though, I've been Chris, and this has been
Cheryl, and we will see you all next time.